أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. لقد كان لسبإ في مسكنهم آية جنتان عن يمين وشمال كلوا من رزق ربكم واشكروا له بلدة طيبة ورب غفور فأعرضوا فأرسلنا عليهم سيل العرم وبدلنا لهم بجناتهم جنتين ذواتي أكل خمط وأثل وشيء من سدر قليل رب اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقه قولي فالحمد لله والصلاة والسلام على رسول الله وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين ثم أما بعد السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. We're now getting a tour of the kingdom of Saba, and Allah says لقد كان في سبأ في مسكنهم آية. For Saba, in their dwellings, in their homes, there was a miracle. جنتان عن يمين وشمال. There were gardens both on the right and left, meaning both sides, all territories of the kingdom of Saba, Yemen, was flooded with greenery. كُلُوا مِن رِزْقِ رَبِّكُمْ. Consume from the provisions of your master. وَاشْكُرُوا لَهُ. And be grateful to him. بَلْدَةٌ طَيِّبَةٌ. Now it's a commentary. What a good and pure land. وَرَبٌّ غَفُورٌ. And a master that's exceedingly forgiving. In other words, you're supposed to be grateful, but you're not grateful, and a master has been continually forgiving to you. All these mercies have been granted to you and you haven't taken advantage of it. فَأَعْرَضُوا. Then they ignored. They ignored what? The maf'ul bihi, the object isn't mentioned because it's obvious. Be grateful to what Allah has given you. Just like the other end of the kingdom, on the other side there's Sulaiman and Dawood, and they're grateful for the great things they enjoy. These people weren't grateful. فَأَرْسَلْنَا عَلَيْهِمْ سَيْلَ الْعَرِمِ. Then we sent against them the flood of Arim. Arim was a dam. Inhara saddul Arim. The dam cracked open. This is basically a marine town, and it's kind of under the sea level. So when the floodwaters broke, when the dam broke, the levees broke, the entire city was flooded. وَبَدَّلْنَاهُمْ بِجَنَّاتِهِمْ جَنَّتَيْنِ ذَوَاتَيْ أُكُلٍ خَمْطٍ. And we replaced their gardens, multiple gardens that they enjoyed, with just two kinds of gardens, both of which would have ukulin khamtin, the kinds of fruit, ukul, things that you can eat, fruits. Khamt is sour and tasteless. يعني ثمر مر تعافه النفس, that the person doesn't like to eat. They don't get no taste out of it. وأثل. And tamarisk. Tamarisk is a kind of plant that only grows in like desert climates and rocks and stuff like that, like thorny leaves. Really spiky leaves, not really any fruit, doesn't really have much benefit. وَشَيْءٍ مِّن سِدْرٍ قَلِيلٍ. And then some kind of lotus plants, a little bit here and there. In other words, what used to be covered in greenery now has some green here and there, and even that kind of green is not something human beings can really get much benefit out of. So it's not really a garden anymore. You see, this was a trade capital, and it was an agricultural capital. So they used to export a lot of their agriculture, and they used to take it inwards into the land also. But after this flood, they were completely wiped out. ذَلِكَ جَزَيْنَاهُمْ بِمَا كَفَرُوا. That is how we compensated them on account of their disbelief. وَهَلْ نُجَازِي إِلَّا الْكَفُورِ. And do we take revenge? Jaza yujazi is actually from jaza, but to take revenge in full, except against the one who's extremely ungrateful. So Allah is saying this nation was extremely full of themselves and extremely ungrateful, and Allah is going to give us a little bit of their economic history. With all those gardens that they enjoyed before destruction came, what were they like? وَجَعَلْنَا بَيْنَهُمْ وَبَيْنَ الْقُرَى الَّتِي بَارَكْنَا فِيهَا قُرًى ظَاهِرًا. And we had placed between them and between the towns that we had blessed, meaning Jerusalem, Palestine, that region, between them and Saba, we had put many obvious towns, Quran Zahira. In other words, it wasn't just all desert until you get to Saba, or you get to Jerusalem, or you get to Palestine. There were actually other smaller towns and cities in between. And this plays a role in trade. Because if you're trying to sell to the far end city, that's the big civilization, but you have all these other cities in the middle, then you're kind of sharing an economy. You're an interdependent economy. right? So if you just have major trade partners and these little people in the middle aren't taking away from your sales, because these are all competition to them. All these smaller ones are competition to them. You could think of it in the modern sense as a big box store or company, a conglomerate, and a mom and pop shop. And what happens to these big box stores? They, little by little, want to take out all the mom and pop shops and get them out of the way because they're kind of getting in the way of their bottom line. So they saw these Quran Zahira, these middle townships, they actually saw them as competition to their monopoly. So قَدَّرْنَا فِيهَا السَّيْرَ, and we had made travel through these towns very easy. So Allah said these were accessible towns. سِيرُوا فِيهَا لَيَالِي وَأَيَّامٍ آمِنِينَ, and you could travel in the middle of them, in the middle of the night, and daytime doesn't matter, you'll stay safe. It wasn't like the Arabs were now. The Arabs now were not safe all the time. But back in the day, in this time, and this is about 120, 130 years, the flood that is talked about, this dam breaking, happened about the year 450 after Isa alayhi salam. So we're talking about 120 years or so before the Prophet is born. The Prophet is 570, 571 AD, and this happens in 450 AD. So 120 years before that, the economy of Yemen was destroyed. But before it was destroyed, this is the description. They were on the other end, there's the Great Kingdom, there's Palestine, and in between there are these small towns that were easy to travel through. And so they were kind of sharing in a good economy. All of them were doing well. But they didn't like that. قَالُوا رَبَّنَا فَقَالُوا رَبَّنَا بَاعِدْ بَيْنَ أَسْفَارِنَا. They said, our master, cause distance between our journeys. In other words, make the journey so difficult that only the very wealthy are able to embark on those kinds of investments, to go all the way out to the other end of the territory. And the people that can easily, because Allah said we made travel easy. So everybody was getting economic opportunity. The small guy was doing business too. And they were making it too, and they didn't want that to happen. So they wanted the roads to be made in a way, and to happen in a way that only the very wealthy could actually engage in the long journey. Because the longer the journey, the more wealth you have to be able to engage in it. Right? So they wanted this economic exchange to only happen between the very, very wealthy. And they wanted to suffocate the small businesses, the small towns in the process. بَاعِدْ بَيْنَ أَسْفَارِنَا وَظَلَمُوا أَنفُسَهُم. And they're even praying for that. And you know why it says praying for that? Because there's this entire element to it, and it's in modern times it's very easy to appreciate this kind of a social phenomenon. You have a nation that says our economy is in danger because of these lesser competitors. And we have to pray for the prosperity of our nation. And prayer is a means of congregating people. So even though Allah says, Rabbana, they made dua, what it also signifies is they joined people together and they almost made it a religious cause to buy local or to not give support to these other towns that are beneficiaries also of this good economy. We want to just kind of circumvent them and undermine them. And you'll notice even today that you'll have a group of people that will claim to be religious, and on top of that talk about this kind of economic elitism where they don't want any foreign exchanges, or they don't want to make partners with others, and they want to export but they don't want to import, and they don't want to share in the profits, and they don't want to have an economy in which everybody prospers. They'd rather be the number one, or cut out the competitors from the middle, etc., etc. And to galvanize support, they use religion. It's pretty cool. And this is happening back in the day. Okay? So this is the old Tea Party. It was back in the day Tea Party situation. Okay? So وَظَلَمُوا أَنفُسَهُمْ فَجَعَلْنَاهُمْ أَحَادِيث. And they wronged themselves, so we made them historical stories. A hadith, stories that are told. People were like, did you know what happened to them? Oh my God. And people would go and they'd be in shock to look at, this was the great nation of Saba, what happened to them? They're completely wiped out. وَمَزَّقْنَاهُمْ كُلَّ مُمَزَّقٍ. And they were completely annihilated. By the way, when this annihilation happened, a lot of the Yemenis migrated. And Aus and Khazraj, for example, are migrants from the Saba lands, from the Yemeni lands. They're Yemeni tribes that moved to Medina. So they liked Medina because it was somewhat of a reminder of what they used to have, because it was green territory. إِنَّ فِي ذَلِكَ لَآيَاتٍ لِكُلِّ صَبَّارٍ شَكُورٍ. In all of that there are many miraculous signs for all those who continually have patience and are looking to be extremely grateful. Patient with what you have. Don't become too greedy, and be grateful for what you have. وَلَقَدْ صَدَّقَ عَلَيْهِمْ إِبْلِيسُ ظَنَّهُ. And Iblis confirmed his assumption about them. His conviction about them is they're not going to be grateful and they're not going to be patient. فَاتَّبَعُوهُ, then they ended up following him. إِلَّا فَرِيقًا مِنَ الْمُؤْمِنِينَ, except for a group among the true believers even there. And of course that group, some even argue, is the Aus and Khazraj that eventually became Muslim. إِلَّا فَرِيقًا مِنَ الْمُؤْمِنِينَ, because at that time they were also people of the book. وَمَا كَانَ لَهُ عَلَيْهِ مِنْ سُلْطَانٍ, and Shaitan did not have any authority against them at all. Meaning even the people who followed him, it's not like he had control over them. إِلَّا لِنَعْلَمَ مَنْ يُؤْمِنُ بِالْآخِرَةِ, except we wanted to see who of them truly believes in the afterlife and who becomes a materialist. مِمَّنْ هُوَ مِنْهَا, among them who are within the population that is within those ranks, meaning the people of Saba. وَمِمَّنْ هُوَ مِنْهَا فِي شَكٍّ وَرَبُّكَ عَلَى كُلِّ شَيْءٍ حَفِيظٌ, and who of them is still in doubt? Who of them is not sure of the afterlife? And Allah is in complete guardianship over all things. Had Allah wanted, the flood would have never happened. Those kingdoms would have survived. Had Allah wanted, Sulaiman a.s. would not have died. So there's, on the one hand, the king dies, Sulaiman a.s. dies, and there's a downfall on the one side. And on the other side, there's a flood that brings about a downfall. But there's rises and falls on both sides of these. And as a result of these two downfalls, Makkah became sort of the trade alternative. So trade started going through Makkah, and it was completely overlooked before because of Yemen. And as a matter of fact, when trade started going through Makkah, who felt like they've been completely overlooked? The Yemenis. And so later on, when Abraha is a king in Yemen, what does he want to do? Bring attention back to Yemen, like it used to be in the old days. So he says we should destroy their Qibla and we should build a Qibla in Yemen so we could bring economic prosperity back to Yemen. That was his, there was capitalism behind the scenes of it all. He wasn't just interested in building a Kaaba for the purpose of building a nice monument. He wanted to destroy that one because the Arab attention would come back to Yemen again. قُلِ ادْعُوا الَّذِينَ زَعَمْتُم مِّن دُونِ اللَّهِ لَا يَمْلِكُونَ مِثْقَالَ ذَرَّةٍ فِي السَّمَاوَاتِ وَلَا فِي الْأَرْضِ. Say, those who you are calling or you are so confident about, you make assumptions about other than Allah, zu'um is like a false assumption. لَا يَمْلِكُونَ مِثْقَالَ ذَرَّةٍ, they don't have the power even over the weight of a speck. But in the beginning of the surah, Allah keeps an eye over the weight of a speck. Now, they don't even control the weight of a speck. They don't own the weight of a speck. No, neither in the skies or the earth. وَمَا لَهُمْ, and they're not going to have فِيهِمَا, neither in the skies or the earth, مِن شِرْكٍ, any partnership. They're not going to have any share. وَمَا لَهُمْ مِن ظَهِيرٍ, and they're not going to have anybody to back them up either. وَلَا تَنْفَعُ الشَّفَاعَةُ عِنْدَهُ إِلَّا لِمَنْ أَذِنَ لَهُ, and no one makes a case before him except the one he gives permission to. حَتَّى إِذَا فُزِّعَ عَنْ قُلُوبِهِمْ, until the point where the terror is gone from their hearts. فَزَّعَ in Arabic, interesting, one of the benefits of taf'il, Arabic students listen up, is actually izala, to remove something. For example, in the Arabic language, if you say قَشَّرَ, qishr means the peel, like of a qashar al-burtuqal, for example. Qashar al-burtuqal is the peel of an orange. Qashar al-burtuqal, to remove the peel. To remove the peel. Fazi'a, to be terrified. Fazza'a, to remove the terror. Fuzzi'a an qulubihim, when the terror was removed from their hearts. Qalu madha qala rabbukum, they would say, what did your master say? What is this ayah talking about? It's talking about the angels that were worshipped. And Allah says the reality of those angels is, first of all, they don't make a case before Allah for anybody, on anybody's behalf. Second of all, when Allah gives a command, every time Allah gives a command, they get terrified. حَتَّى إِذَا فُزِّعَ عَنْ قُلُوبِهِمْ, until the terror is removed from their hearts, then they say, what did your master say? Has in the seventh heaven some commandment been given? Because we felt the terror down here. We were shaken up. So they asked the angels in the higher ranks, is there some verdict that came from Allah? Some nation is supposed to be destroyed or something? And there's different ranks of angels having a conversation among each other. قَالُوا الْحَقِّ, they said he revealed or he declared the truth. وَهُوَ الْعَلِيُّ الْكَبِيرُ, and he is the ultimately high, the all great. قُلْ مَنْ يَرْزُقُكُم مِّنَ السَّمَاوَاتِ وَالْأَرْضِ. And by the way, this is mentioned because there are two kingdoms that were just mentioned. And then Allah mentions His kingdom. And when He passes a verdict, how terrified His subjects are. And His first subjects are the angels. And this is another reason this is mentioned, is because there were two kinds of kind of psychologies of shirk. One of them I've talked about to you before, that they're going to be shufa'a, ha'ula'i shufa'a'una 'inda Allah. They're going to get in between us and Allah, and they've got connections with Allah. The other theology was that God, major God, with a capital G, has these sub-gods that do His work. Because He can't get Himself busy with all this stuff, so He made a God for the sun, He made a God for water, He made a God for the trees, etc., 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 and they do His work. And He needs them, just like the federal government needs these departments. So he's capital G, and He's got all these small gods, and that's what these angels are. These angels do all of His work. Now in Islam there are some parallels to that. Revelation does teach us that Allah has appointed angels for certain tasks. Like the angel of death, for instance, the angel of revelation, for instance. Angels that are protecting us, for instance. There are angels assigned different tasks from Allah. But when does it become shirk? It becomes shirk when they believe that these angels are needed by Allah. And they have some power themselves, and you should call on those angels. If they're in charge of death, if there's Malakul Maut in charge of death, I should call on him to wish for death on someone, or to save me from death, or something like that. But in our deen, all of these are slaves to Allah, and actually Allah doesn't even need them. He can intervene Himself directly too. And He's created them, He's created these angels just to help us appreciate His power. That's it. They're angels assigned to carry, their job is to drag around the hellfire. They're angels that are the guardians of hellfire. They're angels that are just there as the security gates of paradise, there to just welcome you and say salam to you and show you to your home. Angels have been given these different jobs. And these angels themselves have no power at all. As a matter of fact, when Allah gives a command, they get terrified. And until then, when the shock wears off, then they ask, what did Allah say? Is there something for us too? Because the command is sent down from one department to the next. And so they ask. This is what's being clarified here. قُلْ مَنْ يَرْزُقُكُم مِّنَ السَّمَاوَاتِ وَالْأَرْضِ. Tell them, who provides you from the skies and the earth? قُلِ اللَّهِ. Tell them it's Allah. Provision is mentioned because two kingdoms had great provision. And now you have provision. Where do you think it comes from? Where do you think it came from them? For them. And how do you think you're any different? وَإِنَّا وَإِيَّاكُمْ لَعَلَى هُدًى. And no doubt we and all of you, we're going to find out soon. أَوْ إِيَّاكُمْ لَعَلَى هُدًى. Is it we or all of you that are committed to guidance? أَوْ فِي ضَلَالٍ مُبِينٍ. And who of us is immersed, drowning, obviously in misguidance? You see, now Allah has given them a history of how did you Quraysh end up where you ended up? How do you enjoy the economic prosperity that you do? If the kingdom of Sulaiman alayhi salam survived, you would have been worthless. They would have been in charge. If the kingdom of Saba survived, you would have been worthless. They would have been in charge. Nobody would have come to you. Nobody would have seen your value. You're enjoying this prosperity because Allah created these kingdoms, and then their downfalls also came. And you are now the inheritors of all these events in history. So where do you think yours comes from? They've been given a historical perspective. قُلْ لَا تُسْأَلُونَ عَمَّا أَجْرَمْنَا. Tell them, you're not going to be asked about whatever crimes we commit. Because you think, now this is interesting, the Quraysh think that the Muslims are criminals. Then tell them, you're not going to be asked about the crimes we've committed, quote unquote. وَلَا نُسْأَلُ عَمَّا تَعْمَلُونَ. And we're not going to be asked about the things you're doing. You notice that the crime was attributed to ourselves because it's speaking from their point of view. You guys think we're doing a crime? Well, you should know that you're not going to be asked about what we did. And Allah didn't say, because it's beginnings of da'wah still here, Allah didn't say to them, وَلَا نُسْأَلُ عَمَّا تُجْرِمُونَ. We're not going to be asked about the crimes you're doing. No, whatever you're doing. Because you don't want them to become aggressive. What do you mean crimes? We haven't done any crimes. Allah doesn't want them to start that aggressive conversation. He wants to call on history. He wants to call on what they're doing, to have them think without this yet being a confrontational argument. قُلْ يَجْمَعُ بَيْنَنَا رَبُّنَا. Tell them, between us, our master is going to cause a union. ثُمَّ يَفْتَحُ بَيْنَنَا. Meaning the union will be on Judgment Day. Then He's going to finally open up His verdict, meaning make the final decision. Fataha, to make the final decision also. بِالْحَقِّ, with truth, with justice. وَهُوَ الْفَتَّاحُ الْعَلِيمُ. And He's the ultimate final decision maker, the all-knowledgeable. قُلْ أَرُونِي. Tell them, show me. الَّذِينَ أَلْحَقْتُمْ بِهِ شُرَكَاء. Show me these partners that you've joined together with Allah. What have you joined together as partners with Him? كَلَّا. بَلْ هُوَ اللَّهُ الْعَزِيزُ الْحَكِيمُ. No, not at all. You're not able to show me anything. What are you going to point at rocks? That is Allah, the ultimate. In fact, He's Allah, the ultimate authority, the all-wise.